Dark and golden ages, a mosaic of peoples and creeds, civilizations stacked one upon another. Turkey, the sky portrait of 6,000 years. All that is most ancient, much that is new. And now, the acceleration of the 20th century. Even from above, the population explosion is evident. The hill village doubled by a twin township on the next slope, for the workers who go down into the non-stop day and night world of steelmaking. Tomorrow, more young men seeking jobs, more projects demanding steel. So another valley is laid out to absorb the men, to produce the metal. Behind the factories, the ports like Zonguldak, wrested from the waters of the Black Sea to meet today's irresistible imperatives of produce, export, import, produce again, or slip back into the 19th century. New suburbs stalk out over the Anatolian plain, but at least there's room enough. 1.5 times the area of France, Turkey, the third largest NATO nation, is networked by one of the busiest internal airlines in Europe or Asia. The early morning flight from Istanbul descends toward the capital, Ankara, a city far inland that 50 years ago was a half-forgotten citadel 300 miles from electricity. The citadel is still there, but with electricity. At its feet, a new Ankara of 700,000 citizens. Parliament buildings and technical institutes, universities and theaters, apartments, office blocks, hotels and boulevards. All this because one man persuaded his people to make it so. Kemal Atatürk, father of all Turks, rests now in a sober monument of stone above the city he willed into existence. After 20 hectic years as one of the most radical reformers in the history of man, he lies in state, guarded and revered. His memory and his precepts dominate life in his country, and his city still grows. Skyscrapers marking the beat of an economy now reaching far beyond even his dreams. But some policies have changed not at all since the beginning of the revolution he led in 1922. Like his insistence that progress can only be made behind a defensive shield, a lesson not forgotten today. Flight TK-106 has this morning brought to Ankara a typical cross-section of Turkish men and women. Engineers and teachers, pilots and bankers, army officers, legislators and students. almost all graduates of the educational system that Ataturk began as the foundation of his reforms. An intellectual revolution so profound that it went to the very roots of language, to a new Latin alphabet, imposed in place of the beautiful but impractical script of the sultans. Modern posters and graphics and the international bookshops make it difficult to realize that only 40 years ago, most Turks could read only the archaic scripts. As though to record this change forever, the gateway to Istanbul University reads both old and new. It stands close by the venerable Süleymaniye Mosque and its madrasa, or school, for centuries a center of Quranic teaching. But today, only a backdrop, but a magnificent backdrop, for thousands of young undergraduates who take the sun and study their textbooks on the university terrace. Around 50,000 students are enrolled each year in Turkish universities and technical institutes. In its time, the most startling Ataturk reform was the emancipation of women. All professions are now open to them. Thousands are lawyers and teachers, doctors and engineers, or scientists, like this physicist. She works in the laboratories of the National Nuclear Research Center a few miles from Istanbul, where an atomic pile is being recharged with nuclear fuel elements.
13'e koyuyoruz. Evet. 13 yükleniyor. Tamam. Tamam. Su çıkartılıyor. Su uzaklaştırıldı.
TR1 goes critical today. Water in the cooling tanks must be checked for radioactivity, a responsible job. Women are also in Parliament, and many have held top positions in the administration. Parliament meets under Ataturk's reminder that sovereignty belongs without reservation to the people. But the people, as he knew, must be educated to become citizens. In the nation's system of universal education, history is emphasized. It begins 6,000 years ago with the Hittites and the buried treasure they left in Anatolia. Children learn of the Hellenists and their colonies, spread first along the Mediterranean and later inland. Turkey is rich in ancient cities like Pergama, crowning a hilltop near Izmir, with its great theater scooped out of the steep slopes. Pergama is Roman as well as Greek, and students learn how one civilization fused with the next. At Side on the south coast, Romans built the first artificial harbor in history, and successive cities were built and destroyed on the same site, the last by massive earthquakes. Every summer, students of archaeology from Istanbul University spend their holidays directing the search for lost civilizations.
Yavaş. Hadi bırakalım şimdi bunu. Tamam, tamam. Öteki tarafa gidelim de o heykel şeysini kaldıralım.
Bakın bir baş parmak bulundu.
Such excavations have the fascination of a thriller. The smallest clue can change the picture. Whether the thumb is from the right hand or the left may decide where to look for the rest of a statue. Here was Hierapolis, medical center of the Roman world. The warm, healing springs spill their minerals down the hillside and form frosty white steps that Turks call Pamukkale, the Cotton Cliffs. Sybarites still take the waters from a Tucson motel hidden below the city walls. To swim here is to take a dip into history over the flooded ruins of a Roman temple where fallen columns are islands of rest and conversation. When Rome was overrun by Vandals from the north, the Eastern Empire came into its own. On the shores of the Bosphorus, the Emperor Constantine built a new Rome, the modern Istanbul. This Byzantine Empire stood secure within its walls for over 1,000 years. Its influence spread over Asia Minor and up into the lost Anatolian valleys of Cappadocia, where prospered a little-known Christian community. During 6 centuries of peace and isolation, its members hollowed out the very rocks into 300 churches wherein to give thanks unto God. Such places of worship were left unharmed by the Turks, who 10 centuries ago, under their Seljuk kings, were creating their own palaces and monuments around Konya, Antalya, and Kayseri. Seljuk architects developed distinctive forms of construction and styles of decoration, notably the stalactite arches. Still more majestic were the 500 years of building of the Ottoman Empire. Hagia Sophia was enlarged, the Blue Mosque built, and hundreds more mosques, large and small, rose over Istanbul and other Turkish cities. Unique is the Topkapi Saray, a city within a city where sultans reigned with ministers and the imperial mint, with advisors and courtiers, with guards and harem. This palace principality ruled an empire stretching far into Europe, across Asia, and around the southern shores of the Mediterranean. Defenders of Islam, their Ayyub Mosque became a holy place, second only to Mecca. But the greatest Ottoman shrines are in Bursa. Incomparable is the Green Mosque, sheathed in 15th century tiles. Here the great sultans and their sons were laid to rest, and around them their soldiers and viziers. A stone turban marking each tomb. The echo of their music still rings today among a handful of troubadours, poets and musicians playing from village to village. The family of the famous Ashik Ishani travels with him as he sings his way through Anatolia.
bağladın beni, aşkın zinciriyle bağladın beni. Aşkın etti beni deli divane, aşkın etti beni deli divane. Ben seni sevdiysem bundan kime ne? Ben seni sevdiysem bundan kime ne? Vallahi severim, billah severim. Yar seni anamdan fazla severim. Vallahi severim, billah severim. Yar seni babandan fazla severim. Doldur sevdiğim kendi elinle, uzat mezesini tatlı dilinle, uzat mezesini tatlı dilinle. İçip içip sarhoş olalım gel gel, İçip içip sarhoş olalım gel gel. Hayatın tadını bulalım gel gel, hayatın tadını bulalım gel gel. Vallahi severim.
These half-forgotten songs of the old world Turkey are an amusing curiosity to a new generation, a charming anachronism in their world of men and machines changing the face of the country. Sadly, but inevitably, Ishani's tradition barely survives in a world where even the countryside must be rationalized and planned.
Pamuğunuzun kalitesi standart 1'dir. Yalnız toplamaya...
Today, modern farmers must meet new technical standards to reach the markets they need abroad. To help them, government inspectors are there to check the crops and comment on quality and grade, a rule that holds for fruit too.
Evet efendim. Talimata uygun ilaçlanmıştır.
Here grapes that once sold only to the nearby towns are now being flown out to Britain and Germany. But most of the fruit still goes out dried through the port of Izmir. Tons of it go to every country on earth, carried by the deep-sea merchantmen of a dozen nations. Small boats are another source of wealth and part of a way of living. For food and its quality is important to Turks. They like to buy, cook, and eat the catch within an hour of it being landed. In fruit markets, customers are just as exacting, and most bread continues to come from individual bakers' ovens, where the consumer still has the advantage of coming face to face with the producer. Around this village pattern, there are still Turks, especially of the older generation, who cling to the past and try to teach their children the centuries-old form of checkers that was the one relaxation known to their fathers. But their daughters have already found new and better ways of keeping the old ideas alive. The embroidery, that was once the pride of housebound Turkish women, is now a school subject. These student teachers will soon go out into the villages to preserve traditional designs that might otherwise be lost in the race to modernize. Scholarship and aptitude are the only qualifications for entry to top schools like the Ankara Conservatoire. where for 5 years chosen youngsters from all over the country receive a general education and work long hours learning to dance. Ballet to the Turk is relatively new, but the physical vitality it demands is rooted in the national character, expressed here by the age-old sword dance of Bursa. At first, the Ataturk drive to modernize left little time for cut-and-dried tradition. But now, old customs are being revived as showpieces by the new generation. The music of the Janissaries, that once made Vienna tremble, is performed nowadays as a spectacular display by infantrymen and tank gunners of the Turkish army. Pride in history clings, and in honor of the conqueror of 1453, the latest mobile Honest John launcher is baptized Fatih. Long ago, the Turks learned to live with the threats that come to them from over their common frontiers with the Soviet Union and communist Bulgaria. Here the Iron Curtain becomes the brutal reality of barbed wire, minefields, and steel watchtowers. This silent, empty place, some 900 miles into Asia from the Mediterranean shore, is suddenly brought to life by the unlikely bustle of a train, courtesy of Turkish state railways. By any standard, it's a small train, but in the timetables it can boast of international status. And twice a week along this frontier, it makes a gesture of goodwill. For under the eyes of a Turkish officer, the driver travels alone 300 yards into Soviet territory. But over the years, his travels have been limited. For by sending the train back into Turkey, repeatedly the Soviet frontier guards acknowledged their responsibility for an artificial barrier to communications set up between East and West. As the Russians have gone to so much trouble to build an Iron Curtain, the practical Turks haven't bothered to put up their own fences. Watching the frontier is a thin screen of tough infantrymen, familiar with every inch of the ground they'd have to defend. They're commanded by a colonel, responsible for the right anchor of the NATO defense line crossing Asia Minor and Europe to Norway's North Cape. Behind him are 500,000 armed Turks and the 14 other nations of NATO, some represented in a joint headquarters on Turkish soil. Staff officers of other NATO nations watch a crack Turkish armored division going through its paces. The Turkish Navy is based in an area that has been vital to world strategy since sea power began. The narrows of the Bosphorus and the Dardanelles, a gateway to the Mediterranean from the east, the warm waters traditionally coveted by the rulers of Russia. But in time of peace, Turkey allows the ships of any nation to pass freely and without prior notice through the Bosphorus. On any and every day of the year, this 12-mile natural canal is a highway, packed with shipping that flies every known maritime flag. And along the shores, where for centuries armies camped and battled, there are now weekend homes and swimming clubs, yacht basins, and holiday apartment blocks. From the air, Istanbul gives a true picture of a city both dynamic and prosperous. But the sky view can't reveal the pressing problems facing Turkey. The need for still wider education, higher capital investment in industry, agriculture, and transport, better living standards, all dependent upon an effective development program for the country as a whole. Like all truly free people, Turks are often divided on the methods by which to achieve their objectives. But whatever their politics, they're resolved to preserve the independence and territorial integrity of the republic founded by Ataturk, and to make their own way free from interference.